Hi, Alex.
Hi, Jared.
What you thinking about?
Oh, stream stuff.
That's nice.
Yeah. Hey, guys.
Hi.
Welcome to part 3 of this video series. So AverMedia were very nice and sent us a few of these things. The Live Streamer Kit 311. The, what have I got here? Live Gamer Ultra Capture Card and another AM310 mic. So we got 2 of them. So last week we put them all together and had a brain fire. So last time we put it all together and we promised this time we'd be showing you how to actually set up all the software for it. So yeah, let's get into it. Let's do it.
That sounds riveting.
I like it. It's fun. Let's do it.
Yeah.
So let's get started with AverMedia's own software, RecCentral 4. There's a download link in the description below. The first problem you're likely to run into is HDCP blocking the signal. HDCP stands for High Bandwidth Digital Content Protection. It's basically a protocol designed to stop you from recording or transcoding media content that you don't have the rights to copy. Things like Netflix, for example. To be able to capture your console, you will need to disable HDCP. On PS4, this can be done by going to Settings, keep scrolling all the way down to System, and then toggling the Enable HDCP option. This doesn't require a reboot and should kick in immediately. Unfortunately, turning HDCP off prevents you from using apps like Netflix and YouTube, so depending on what you use your console for, you might find yourself turning this off and on a lot. With that done, let's jump back into RecCentral 4. RecCentral 4 picks up the capture card straight away, which is excellent. Now you can use the software in single mode or multi-mode. We'll start with single. Single mode is the simplest one, and it only lets you capture the console signal, with no overlays, no webcams or anything else. But if you're making a Let's Play, or just experimenting, that might be exactly what you want. Even though it's simple, there are a few options that you'll need to configure. Firstly, you can edit the settings for the capture card itself. It has 4 different decode format options available, each with their own pros and cons. NV12 is the lowest quality, highest performing one. This is what you want to use if you have a weaker system. RGB24 produces the highest quality but has the biggest CPU impact. YUY2 is right down the middle, striking a balance between NV12 and RGB24. P010 is for 10-bit depth and capturing HDR. You can also define a resolution and a refresh rate here, as well as color adjustments. For our purposes, we'll be using a 1920 by 1080 at 60 FPS. Next, let's jump into recording settings, for when you want to record highlights or Let's Plays. There are 4 profiles available by default: Optimal, Good, Normal, and Default. Instead, we're going to create a new profile. First, we're going to experiment with the H.265 HEVC format, which is a high-density format that's much more efficient than H.264, but only if you've got the right tools to play and edit them. This will be our preferred format for recording, so we don't fill up our precious SSD space with raw footage. The HEVC profile controls the bit depth. Main is fine, while main 10 will do up to 10-bit HDR, if relevant. The resolution for us is 1920 by 1080, but remember this card can manage up to 4K, and the FPS will be set to 60. Now, for bitrate, we traditionally use 50 megabits for H.264 recording. H.265 HEVC is roughly twice as efficient. I'm going to set it to 30, just to be safe. A keyframe value of 2 seconds is fine. That's the same keyframe setting used by most streaming platforms. 192 kilobits audio bitrate suits me fine. And for the codec profile, we want high quality. For H.264, if you don't have the tools to work with H.265, I would recommend mostly the same settings, but set the bitrate at 50 megabits or higher to compensate, and the H.264 profile should be set to high. And that's literally it for recording. You get an estimate of how much recording time you have based on your free drive space, and you can just hit record and go. You can also add other audio input devices into the mix if you want to record your mic straight in with the footage, but we'll cover that audio mixer in just a little bit. You can hit the big record button to start and stop recording. To set up your streaming settings, click on the Stream tab. Click the plus button next to the streaming platform dropdown to add your streaming service. You can either set it up using an RTMP URL and private key, or select the service you want to use and log in directly. I've got this set up with our Onion Party Twitch account. Once that's done, you will need to configure your quality settings. Note these are a separate profile from what we set up on the Recording tab. The defaults might suit you, but I prefer to make custom settings. You cannot stream H.265 to Twitch, so H.264 is the only available option here. The H.264 profile should be set to high. You may want to stream at 1080p or possibly 720p, depending on the game you're playing. We normally stream at 720p, so that's what I'll go with, while keeping it at 60 FPS. The video bitrate will depend on your streaming platform. You can't go above 6 megabits on Twitch, so I recommend somewhere from 4.5 to 6 for an affiliate channel. We normally run an audio bitrate of 160 for streaming. And the codec profiles should be high quality. Now it's ready to go, but there's also a streaming backup feature you can use to record a second version of your stream straight to your local machine. You can make it the same quality as your stream if you want to keep it small, or you can use your recording settings from before to keep a high quality version. Hitting the Start Streaming button will take you live, but let's not do that right now. Finally, let's look at sound. Adding the AM310 microphone to Windows is super easy, and there's only really one place you might get stuck. When you've got the microphone plugged into the computer, go find your recording devices in the control panel. Firstly, double-check your default playback and recording devices. The AM310 is likely to become the default playback device the first time you plug it in. If you don't want this, you should change that now. It'll also become the default recording device, which probably is what you want. Go into the properties for the microphone and check the Levels tab. Out of the box, it defaults to 0 and will be too quiet to use. We found on 2 machines so far that 70 seems to be a good level, but your system may vary and you should test it. Next, let's take a peek at the sound management options in RecCentral 4. The first button here toggles your external sound device, which by default is your default recording device from Windows. Then there's an analog volume control for that device. Next to that is a toggle for your default playback device, and volume control for that too. The next button along mutes and unmutes your device preview. This lets you hear what the capture card is picking up from your console on that PC, which is useful for testing your setup. Finally, there is the audio mixer button. This is where the magic happens. This brings up the audio mixer window. Here you can manage existing sound devices, plus add and remove new ones. For each device, you can flag whether or not you wish to capture audio from this device into your stream or recording. For your default playback device, you might want this to record if you're using Streamlabs alerts or something like that. You can set individual volume levels for each of them. And you can introduce a delay if you need to sync the signal up to microphones. Under external audio is where you can add and manage your microphones. If your microphone is already your Windows default recording device, then you can manage it using the default row. But if you want to manage it separately, click the plus button, select from the available devices, and you can start tinkering. You can also flag an external audio device to record into a separate MP3 file. This can be handy for recordings if you want to be able to edit your microphone track separately from your gameplay. Finally, the last tab is a multi-stream tab. Here you can add multiple different streaming services and simulcast to all of them, which is pretty neat. It otherwise works pretty much the same as the normal stream tab. Now, if you want something a bit more featured than just the single view, perhaps for your live stream, multi-view will give you the ability to use overlays, webcams, and other elements. The multi-view starts with a basic scene, featuring your capture card and nothing else. From there, you can add new scenes from a number of different templates, and beneath that, you can manage the sources that are used in each scene. For example, we'll start with the stream template, which provides a view with your capture card, a webcam placeholder, and an image placeholder. You can manage these elements on the preview window, or by using the source list in the bottom left. Let's start with the camera by clicking the plus, and then selecting the live streamer cam 313. Boom, the webcam is live. You can move it anywhere on the scene, scale it, crop, and rotate as needed. You can adjust your webcam resolution and frame rate, as well as advanced options for brightness, contrast, and more. It's also got an easy chroma key option. Next, let's add our webcam border that we normally use, which for us is a video file. But it seems we can't apply an image mask filter in RECentral 4, which is how we normally add our transparency to the overlay. For now, I'll just use a static image instead. Depending on what you use, this may or may not be an issue for you. Ensure the webcam sits behind the frame and crop the webcam down to fit your frame by alt-dragging. Looking good. Next, let's add our chat overlay. We include a chat box widget provided by Streamlabs, so viewers watching in full screen can still read the chat. Simply add a new source and select Web. Enter the URL of your chat box widget acquired from your Streamlabs management console. Give the source a name and hit OK. Position it within the scene wherever you like. Now you've got your web browser element. You can check it's working by sending a quick test message on your Twitch channel chat. You can customize the settings in a similar way to your webcam and other elements. The web source supports custom CSS, which you can use to customize your chat display, such as adding a drop shadow. Repeat the same process for your subscribe, follow, and donation alerts by adding a second web source. The first time I tried this, our WebM alerts would not animate and they'd just get stuck on the first frame. The second time, however, it worked fine. So your mileage may vary. Animated GIFs and sounds work reliably, so depending on what you use, you might be okay. It's just something to keep in mind. Remember, if you have on-screen alerts, you need to have your default playback device set to record in the audio mixer. Your recording and streaming settings have to be configured in much the same way as the single mode. Just like the single mode, there's an option to take a backup of your stream with the same or different quality settings. And finally, it's got the same multi-stream capability as single mode. So once you've got all that set up, you can create your intro, be right back, and other scenes really easily. Just add a new scene using the normal template, which is blank. Add a video source, or whatever is appropriate for the files you use, and set it up to look the way you want it to. For us, we use video files for most of our scenes, and we either have them run once or loop, depending on what it is. Set up a couple of these scenes, and you're good to go. So that's the basic setup for RecCentral 4. It makes it super simple to do a single scene capture of your gameplay, and it's flexible enough to do more complicated things. Now, I did run into those problems with the video filters and WebM playback, but if they aren't part of your workflow, then they're no problem. Now, if you already have an established workflow in OBS, like we do for our PC games, then you might want to use that instead. The good news is you can still do it, with a couple of small differences. My preference when starting out in OBS is to get all of my video and audio settings out of the way first. So, jump into Settings. In the Stream tab, you can link OBS to your Twitch account. Be careful with the Start Streaming button once you've linked them. Under Output, you'll want to set your output mode to Advanced. Your encoder is going to vary with what hardware you have in your machine and your personal preference. The Stream PC for this setup has a GTX 1080, which will do the job fine, so we will use the NVIDIA NVENC H264. Set your rate control to CBR, or constant bitrate. As before, the maximum bitrate supported by Twitch is 6000, The keyframe interval for most major platforms, including Twitch, is 2. Set the preset to max quality. Set the profile to high. Leave look ahead disabled and psycho-visual tuning enabled. The GPU setting only matters if you have more than one GPU in the machine. And finally, a max B-frame setting of 2 is fine for most cases. Next up, the recording settings. Set your recording path wherever you'd like to store them. For the recording format, the best options are MP4 or MKV. You can use the stream encoder settings, but it's generally better to record in a higher quality. Set your rate control to CBR with a bitrate of 50,000. Keyframe interval is not that important for recordings, so you can use either 0 or 2. It doesn't matter. Just like before, set the preset to max quality, the profile to high, disable look ahead, enable psycho-visual tuning, and leave the rest on their defaults. Under the Audio tab, you can set names and bit rates for your audio tracks. It defaults to 160, which is fine for most cases, but you can go up to 192 if you prefer. Moving on to the audio category, we can control our system audio devices. This is where we can define what our microphone input devices are, such as the AM310 USB microphone. Next, in the video category, we can adjust the output resolution of our stream or recording. Something we often do is stream in 720p, downscaled from 1080. This gives a smoother experience for action-heavy games, even when the viewer scales it back up to 1080, but it may depend on your use case. If you're downscaling, I recommend using the Lanczos option. Finally, set your FPS to whatever you're using, usually 30 or 60 FPS. Now that's done, we can start adding things to our OBS scene. First up, the Live Gamer Ultra. Go to Sources and click New, then select Video Capture Device. Give it a name. In the device drop-down, it will pick up whatever's available, such as the capture card and the webcam. Selecting the capture card immediately brings it online. There are customizations you can make, but it works almost entirely out of the box. The only thing you do need to select is Use Custom Audio Device, and then define that device as HDMI Live Gamer Ultra Audio. Otherwise, you'll get picture but no game sound. That's it. With that simple step, we've essentially replicated the single view mode from RecCentral 4. You can stream and record from there, but if we want all the bells and whistles, there's a lot more we can do. Go ahead and duplicate your scene into a new one. On this new scene, add another video capture device source, and name it after the webcam. In the device dropdown, select the Livestreamer Cam 313. Boom, the device is immediately available. You can adjust the resolution, FPS, and other elements through the Properties window. The Configure button gives you access to image quality settings such as white balance, exposure, aperture, and more. Next, we can add a new source for our webcam frame. At Onion Party, we use video files, so let's select a media source. Select the file, set it to loop, and optionally enable hardware decoding, depending on your system. Adjust the size of the frame to suit your scene. Next, I'll right-click the source and go to Filters. Under Effect Filters, I'll add an image mask/blend. Set it to Alpha Mask, Alpha Channel, and provide the PNG copy with transparency enabled. And now we've got our transparent and animated webcam frame. Move the webcam around and crop as needed to fit by Alt-dragging the sides and corners. Looking good. Now it's time to add the chat box and alert widgets from Streamlabs. We add a new source and select Browser. Just like RecCentral 4, simply provide the URL, adjust the height and width, and you can also add custom CSS in this window if necessary. I'm copying some transform settings over from our existing setup. It might be trial and error for you to find what works best. Adding the alerts follows the same pattern. So that's OBS ready to go. For our use case here at Onion Party, we're probably going to run with OBS for live streaming, and then use RecCentral H.265 for our Let's Plays. That way we get the best of both worlds with minimal fuss. RecCentral gives us a few nice features while keeping it super simple and efficient for recording Let's Plays, while OBS suits our existing stream workflow better. We've only just started scratching the surface of what you can do with each of these programs. There's a lot of fancy stuff you can do, including RecCentral's live editing feature. You can also take a clean backup of your game capture by using the AverMedia stream engine connected to OBS, but that's a whole other topic. All right, we're all set up. That was great. That was... Hey. We're there.
Oh,
We made it.
are we starting?
We made
All right,
it.
clap sync.
We made it to the end. Complete stream setup, ready to go. Yeah, so that's just an example of how you can put together just a few fairly affordable products and get a good streaming setup out of it, especially if you have a computer that's perhaps not so good, or you want to do console games. Like, I'm gonna go play this
Anyway.
now. Anyway, we'll see you next time, an Only Party.
Have fun, everyone. Bye, Internet.